I'm 33 years old. My wife is 28, and together we have two beautiful twin daughters. Just 2 days ago, they turned 8, both with the same curly, blonde hair as their mother, absolutely radiant. We named them Louisa and Jessica. My wife's name is also Jessica. Up until just before that day, I believed with all my heart that I had the perfect family. Our daughters adore us, and we, in turn, cherish them. I've always thought of my wife as the very symbol of grace, beauty, and purity. There was never any real conflict between us. Just the usual everyday disagreements over household matters or how to raise the girls, but nothing that could ever make me doubt her. She never once gave me a reason to be jealous, never stirred even the faintest hint of suspicion. In every way, our relationship seemed flawless. Even our intimate life was ideal, so much so that I never felt the need to look anywhere else. It was like living in my own little paradise, a perfect world of warmth and security. Of course, work kept me busy. I'm a truck driver, constantly out on the road, taking extra trips to ensure my family never went without. It was tough at times, but I never minded because I always knew, no matter how long I was away, I had a strong and loving home to return to. My girls, my wife, my Jessica. She was my rock, the safe haven I could rely on after long days away. I could never have imagined, even in my worst nightmares, that my daughter's birthday would become the day my world, or at least the image I had created of my family, would come crashing down. It was 2 days ago, a bright morning when we celebrated the twins' 8th birthday. We gave them their presents, filled the house with laughter, and after a while, we drove them to my mother-in-law's so we could finish some errands before the party later in the day. Our plan was simple: swing by Wegmans, pick up sweets and other party essentials, and return to decorate the apartment. We were expecting guests, and everything had to be perfect. We rushed through the store, buying all we needed, and were finally headed to the car, arms full of bags. I turned to say something to Jessica, but suddenly, she wasn't there. With my hands loaded, I hurriedly packed everything into the trunk and the back seat. I was about to pull out my phone to call her when I spotted her. She was standing to the left of the store entrance, talking to some woman, or rather, arguing. And it wasn't just a small spat. They were at each other, the tension unmistakable. The woman was gesturing wildly, even raising her hand towards Jessica, as though she was going to grab her. I slammed the car shut and sprinted across the parking lot. As I got closer, I saw the woman hurling insults at Jessica, words so harsh that I don't even want to repeat them here. She was ready to hit my wife, her hand already moving, but I managed to step in and stop her just in time. I pushed her hand away, putting myself between them. But that didn't stop her. The insults kept coming. She spat out words that burned my ears, venomous and sharp. If she had been a man, I might have laid her flat right there on the concrete. But all I could do was take a deep breath and ask, "Who are you? And what right do you have to insult my wife like this?" I expected her to back down, maybe even apologize. But instead, she looked me straight in the eye and hissed, "You don't know who you're married to, do you?" In that moment, the ground beneath me felt like it shifted. Jessica started pulling me by the arm, urging me to leave. "Come on, let's go already. Can't you see she's crazy?" she whispered, her voice tight with nerves. The woman, on the other hand, didn't look like your typical crazy person at all. It was hard to place her age, somewhere between 35 and 40, maybe? A striking brunette, dressed well enough to be taken seriously, with makeup that, despite her temper, seemed tastefully done. She turned her sharp gaze towards me, a smirk creeping onto her face. "So, you're the husband, huh?" she said, clapping her hands together like she just won a prize. Her eyes shifted back to Jessica, gleaming with malicious satisfaction. Well, looks like you're in trouble now, sweetheart." Before I could even process what was happening, the woman stepped closer to me. She started casually brushing her fingers against my arm, then my waist, as if testing boundaries, her touch light but bold. "You're not bad at all," she murmured, her voice low and mocking. Then, turning her attention back to Jessica, she grinned wickedly. "Hey, gorgeous, how about lending me your man for a couple of days? I mean, if you can roll around with mine, seems only fair, right? Or do you think I'm just gonna sit back while you have your fun?" That was it. I felt something snap inside me. My blood was boiling. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice barely holding back the rage. "What's going on here? What are you even talking about?" The woman didn't miss a beat. She shrugged, her smirk never leaving her face. "Maybe you should pay a bit more attention to your wife. That way, she might not feel the need to run off and, Find someone else's husband to play with. I stood there, frozen for a moment, staring between the two of them. My mind was reeling, trying to make sense of the words, the accusations, the scene playing out in front of me like some twisted nightmare. I stood there, staring at Jessica as she crumpled into tears, her face buried in her hands. My heart sank at the sight, but I couldn't let emotions cloud the situation. I pressed the car key, the familiar beep signaling that it was unlocked. "Go to the car and wait for me," I said, my voice firm but low. She was still standing there, mumbling something through her sobs, barely coherent. I cut her off, more sharply this time. I said, "Go to the car. Now." The woman, meanwhile, was watching with a smug smile stretched across her face, clearly enjoying every second of this twisted spectacle. I turned to her, trying to keep my cool, even though my mind was racing. "You've got it all wrong," I said, the words coming out more defensive than I intended. "We have a perfect family. I love my wife, and she loves me too. I'm not the type to listen to gossip or believe in baseless accusations." She gave me a pitying look, shaking her head slowly. "Oh, you poor thing," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "Such a young man, already growing a nice pair of horns. Yeah, your wife's been cheating on you with my husband, and I have proof." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I tried to find my footing, but the ground beneath me seemed to be slipping away. My thoughts scrambled. Proof? Cheating? Jessica? It didn't make sense, not on a day like today, not on the birthday of our daughters. The world I thought I knew felt like it was unraveling. I swallowed hard, barely able to get the words out. I can't deal with this right now," I stammered. "Today is our daughter's birthday. This isn't the time." The woman's expression softened slightly, just for a second, before that malicious grin crept back. "Well, wish them good health for me," she said. "But we'll talk again. We'll settle this." She handed me her phone number, and we exchanged details. There would be no running from this, at least, not forever. As I walked back to the car, my head was spinning. What was I supposed to do with all of this? Was it even true? Could it be? I got into the car, and Jessica was in tears, sobbing uncontrollably. The air was thick with tension, but I couldn't deal with it right then. "Don't say anything right now," I told her, my voice steady but cold. "I don't want to hear it. Not today." I demanded she pull herself together, put on a brave face. "No, put on that silly pig mask we had for the party, and pretend that nothing had happened. It's our daughter's birthday, and no one, not you, not me, not even the devil himself is going to ruin it. No drama, no tears. Just act like everything's fine. You've got the experience of acting, don't you?" I added, my words sharper than I intended. Throughout the day, as we prepared, decorated, and set the table, she tried a couple more times to break down, her eyes welling up, her voice trembling. But I shut it down each time, telling her to hold it together. The party was a grand success. First, the kids had their share of fun. There was a feast of treats, a table overflowing with food, presents everywhere, games, and laughter filling every corner of the room. And when the children were finally satisfied, it was the adults' turn to gather around the table. But there was something off about Jessica. She wasn't herself. Normally, she barely drank at all, always stopping after a glass or two. Today, though, she clung to her wine like it was her lifeline, then moved on to cognac without hesitation. I had to step in and stop her more than once, whispering for her to slow down before anyone noticed. She was spiraling, and the tension between us was growing heavier by the minute. When the last of the guests finally left and our two little girls were tucked into bed, beaming with happiness from their special day, I tried to talk to Jessica. I needed answers, but all I got were the same empty phrases, over and over. "I'm sorry. I love you. I love only you," she whispered, her voice breaking. But when I asked her what had really happened, she either said, "I don't know," or "I have nothing to tell you." It was like talking to a wall, each word of hers another crack in the trust that once seemed so unshakable. And with every unanswered question, the weight of the day grew heavier on my shoulders. The next day, which was just yesterday, I called that woman. We arranged to meet at a cafe in the same shopping center we had visited the day before. Her name was Lucy. The moment I sat down, she apologized profusely for her behavior the previous day. She explained that she hadn't known it was my daughter's birthday and that she never intended to ruin it. I waved off her apology, telling her she hadn't ruined anything. I thought I had everything under control. Lucy then pulled out a small laptop from her handbag and inserted a USB stick. She opened a video file, footage from some security cameras, and there it was, right in front of me. My Jessica, the woman I had loved more than anyone in the world, was there, with a man, wrapped in his arms. They entered an apartment building together, lingered inside for hours, and eventually left, all smiles. My heart was pounding in my chest, but Lucy wasn't done. She looked at me, her face a mixture of pity and quiet rage, and said, "I had cameras set up in the apartment too. But trust me, you don't want to see what's next." At first, she had been polite, using formal language, but after I reminded her we had already dropped the formalities the day before, she continued in a more familiar tone. She opened another video, and this one, I could barely look at. The scene played out in my mind in slow motion. My wife, my Jessica, and the man, in our bed. Our bed. While Lucy had been at work, they had been together. There, in the bedroom that was supposed to be ours alone. I had woken up that morning still holding on to some shred of hope, grasping for any reason to believe that Lucy had misunderstood, that it was all just a terrible mistake. I wanted so badly for the woman in those videos to be someone else, for this whole nightmare to vanish. But no, it was her, Jessica, the very person I had built my life around, the one I thought was my angel. And now, there was no doubt. She had betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. The world seemed to crumble beneath my feet. Everything around me faded. The cafe became a blur of noise and shadows. A deafening hum filled my ears, and I could barely breathe, as if something heavy was crushing my chest. I felt completely lost in the moment, unable to think, unable to move. It was as though the floor had been pulled out from under me, and I was plummeting through an endless abyss. Then, suddenly, Lucy's voice cut through the fog. "You're about to break my hand," she said calmly, pulling me back to the present. I looked down and realized I had been gripping her wrist so tightly. My knuckles had gone white. I let go, my hand shaking. She called the waitress over and ordered a cognac and a slice of lemon for me, as if she knew exactly what I needed in that moment. But nothing could dull the pain I was feeling. Nothing could erase the truth that had just been laid bare before me. My life, as I knew it, had shattered. After the second drink, the numbness began to fade, and the truth, raw, painful, and undeniable, settled in. Lucy, now more composed, started to tell me everything she knew about her husband, the man who had become my wife's lover. It turned out he was nothing more than a gigolo, a smooth-talking leech. 8 years younger than Lucy, he had spent his entire life sponging off others. He had no home of his own, and had always lived with his parents and a sister who had been disabled since birth, in a dilapidated Khrushchevka apartment on the edge of nowhere. Lucy wasn't much better off in her childhood either. She came from a poor family. Her father had passed away when she was just 3 years old, and her mother remarried a man who was more interested in drowning himself in alcohol than taking care of his new family. Together, Lucy's mother and stepfather drank their way through the years, leaving Lucy to fend for herself. But unlike them, Lucy had ambition. She clawed her way up from nothing, never thinking about marriage, children, or even love. Her life was entirely about her career, pushing forward, building her business, gaining respect, and she succeeded. She had her own business, a good standing in society, and everything seemed to be going right, until, as she put it, the years began to catch up with her. Once she turned 35, she felt something missing, something deeper, a need for love. That's when he appeared. Lucy admitted that, yes, he could charm anyone with his honeyed words. He was good at spinning tales, weaving dreams, making a woman feel like she was the center of the universe. And Lucy had fallen for it. "He knows how to sing sweetly in your ear," she said with a bitter smile. But now she saw through him. The fantasy had crumbled. She realized there was no future with him, just an empty promise. "It seems," she said with a resigned sigh, "this was never meant to be." Lucy reassured me, or at least she tried, that I didn't need to worry about him anymore. He had already left the city, disappeared for good. "He won't ever be part of your life again," she said with quiet certainty. But her words did little to calm the storm inside me. Nothing about this situation felt right. Nothing could make it better. Before she left, Lucy handed me her business card. It had the address of her office and the number for her assistant. She told me to reach out if I ever needed anything, as though we were now bonded by this shared betrayal. She understood, perhaps better than anyone, the weight of what had just been uncovered. When it was time to go, Lucy's driver took me home in my own car. The ride was a blur. My mind was racing, caught between disbelief, anger, and a deep, overwhelming sense of loss. What had happened to my life? Just yesterday, everything seemed perfect. And now, nothing would ever be the same. When I arrived home, my wife met me at the door, her eyes swollen and red from crying. I didn't need to say much, just that I had found out everything, that I knew the truth now. I made sure to add, almost coldly, that her so-called lover was nothing but a worthless piece of trash. A con artist, a leech who had made a career out of living off others. And yet, even as I said the words, there was this sickening feeling deep inside me, an emptiness I couldn't shake. The world I had built in my mind, the perfect family, the image of my wife, the idea that we were untouchable, was shattered beyond recognition. Everything was crumbling before me, the colors of my life bleeding into dull shades of gray. It's hard to describe the feeling. Imagining someone else touching Jessica, the mother of my daughters, the woman I had loved, was like watching someone defile a sacred image before my eyes. It wasn't just betrayal, it was sacrilege, as if someone had desecrated everything I held holy, right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. And then, of course, my mind would wander to our daughters, Louise and Jessica. How would they take this? How could I explain it to them? They adored their mother. She was their world, just as she had been mine. And I wasn't a bad father. I know that much. But still, they had always seen us as one, a united front, a family that could never be broken. Now, as I stood there, my wife was weeping at my feet, begging for forgiveness. She kept saying she didn't know what had come over her, that some madness had clouded her mind. She swore on our daughters' lives that it would never happen again, that she was desperate for my forgiveness. But what good would that do? You can only die once. After all, the damage was done. Even if I could find it in myself to forgive her, could I ever forget? Could I look at her the same way again? And then this morning, to add to the confusion swirling in my head, I received a message from Lucy. She wanted to offer me a job at her company. Just like that, no drama, no pretense. It was as if she was giving me a way out, a lifeline in the middle of this storm. I didn't know what to say. I told her I'd think about it, but the truth is, I didn't know if I had the energy to think about anything right now. Everything felt too heavy, too overwhelming.